Good morning. My name is Stephen Capaldo, and coming to you from Capaldo with Love, Wheelbarrow Man. And this morning I'm going to talk to you a little bit on applying a scripture from Matthew, and I'm going to apply it to what recently we've been hearing in the news, and hopefully it'll be helpful. And I'm only talking to the people who are interested in finding out stuff. You know, there are a lot of people who aren't really interested in finding out stuff, who either want to hide it or deny it. I'm not talking to those people. I'm talking to the people who really want to find out stuff and think for themselves and do their own research and not put anyone up on a pedestal. So those are the people I'm talking to. So I'll read a little bit from Matthew 10, 34 through 39. Do not think that I've come to bring peace upon the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but war. For I came to set one against another, a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's enemies will be of his household. The one who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and the one who loves a son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And who does not take his cross and follow behind me is not worthy of me. The one who has found his life will destroy it, and the one who has lost his life for my sake will find it. So this is really one of the typical characterizations of Jesus, and you know, you hear a lot of people who say that they follow Jesus so they cannot possibly get involved in politics or anything like that. And I agree that the spiritually minded person should not really have a political mindset. You know, should not have your mind in the political gutter, that's for sure. But Jesus in his life, did he fight for things? Yes, of course he fought for things. So all of these things that I hear from people is, oh, I follow Jesus, you know, so I couldn't possibly say anything about the election because, you know, somebody might hurt me with words, or, you know, somebody might mock me, or I might lose friends over politics or this type of thing. I think it's just an excuse. And people, you don't have to be interested in politics, but I think the Jesus card is very often played as just an excuse that, you know, I can't get involved in something because somebody might say something mean. Well, welcome to life. You know, Jesus said this is life. You know, get used to it. I mean, we're all trying to fight our way through mean words. You know, mean words are used by people against people every day, all the time. So what do you stand for? And of course, spiritually, the Son is the way to the Father. There's no question about that. On the other hand, we're also here, on earth right now. And the way Jesus lived his life, he did fight for things. He did fight for things. And yes, spiritually he did heal, and he did feed, and he helped the people who were oppressed by the Roman Empire. I mean, he did take a stand for the weak and the poor and the oppressed. You know, so I don't really see that saying you're a follower of Jesus and then refusing to discuss anything because you're afraid, I don't really see that that's really following Jesus. You know? But yeah, anyway, that's just an opinion. What I really wanted to talk about was this General Flynn was recently pardoned by Trump, and then he went to Europe to do whatever he did. And recently, this morning I guess it was, that he tweeted for President Trump to invoke temporary martial law. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, what's going on and what that means and what it's about, as I understand it. And I think you have to do your own research as well. But the thing is, you know the story of General Flynn. He had this case where supposedly he was lying, and the prosecution realized that it really was kind of a setup, and so they wanted to drop it, but the judge technically is not allowing them to drop it, so Trump came in and pardoned Flynn. So here we are, and now he was not pardoned that long ago, and he's called for a temporary martial law and new elections. So what's going on? So if we summarize some of the options here, there's a legal option right now. Trump is fighting the results of the election legally in the courts. So, you know, he has made a number of cases in different states and asked for recounts and filed lawsuits and this and that. And if people are familiar at all with litigation, you know, what you do is that you file a bunch of lawsuits, and, you know, you try to narrow down the issues, you know, to maybe a couple of lawsuits. And also what happens in the process of litigation is that other people file in your defense, but it's not really your lawsuit. So when you read in the media, the mainstream media, that all these Trump lawsuits have been rejected, many of them were not Trump lawsuits. Many of them were lawsuits of other people who did not have standing to file an action in that particular court. And then, it depends which judge you get. If you don't get a judge that's amenable to reviewing the evidence, reviewing what there is, then you might lose some lawsuits. So ultimately, this thing will go to the Supreme Court, and it will be ruled on. And the thing is that very often in the mainstream media and mainstream politicians, they say that these are baseless accusations. There is no evidence of legal fraud or fraud in a legal sense. There is no evidence of it. But the evidence goes to the court, and the court has to decide on the value of the evidence. It's not you or me, it's not the media, it's not the politicians, it's the court that has to rule on the evidence. Is that good enough evidence? So if you're very sensitive about using that word evidence, just call it information. I think if you're a responsible journalist, or indeed even a responsible citizen, you would want to look at the information available instead of just saying it doesn't exist, pretending it doesn't exist, or saying, well, okay, here's some information, but it's all dreamt up, it's all conspiracy and all this kind of thing. I think the responsible approach would be to look at the information. And we understand, when people look at information, they don't always come up with the same conclusion. I heard yesterday, someone say, well, those affidavits that people submit, there are misunderstandings there. I'm not saying people are lying, but, they don't understand really how elections work. Well, maybe in some cases, but that's up to the judge to decide. An affidavit is something that you have to swear to under penalty of, legal penalties, perjury. If you're lying, you can't lie in an affidavit. There may be a misunderstanding. It's not the same thing as a deliberate, intentional lie. That may happen sometimes, but what about other information where there is no misunderstanding, where certain things definitely happened? It isn't really a fair argument to say that there's nothing here to look at. But this is what the mainstream media and the mainstream politicians keep saying. There's nothing to look at, that this should have been conceded a long time ago, and this is baseless, and this is false. And the speech that Trump gave the other day, which was very interesting as well, which sets up the legal framework for defending the U.S. Constitution and defending the U.S. against foreign powers, that was dismissed as 45 minutes of ranting and falsehoods and this and that. Now, a responsible press would actually report on the information in that speech, and might still find that it's, they don't like it. I mean, okay, we reach different conclusions. It's like studying the Bible. People look at the same information, they reach different conclusions, and then one calls the other a false teacher. That's how it goes with the Bible. It's not necessarily that someone is a false teacher, it's just that you looked at it one way and I looked at it another way, and we came up with different conclusions. That's fair in a truly open society. That's fair. That's what I'm talking about. It's just, what I'm talking about is the refusal to be informed, the lack of desire to learn, the lack of desire to think for yourself, the lack of desire to look into these things. That's what I'm talking about. So anyway, the legal option is ongoing, which is very tedious with all of these challenges and recounts and this and that. But eventually, I think the end game is for the Supreme Court to say that overall the election was valid or it was invalid. And if invalid, then it would revert to Congress, presumably. And the defense option, which really is what Trump was setting up when he gave his speech on I think it was Wednesday now, the 2nd of December. I think that's setting up a defense of the Constitution, and he's got several tools: a defense of the Constitution and a defense of the U.S. against treasonous actors who are under the influence of foreign powers. Now, why would he be doing this? It doesn't make sense that someone would be doing this unless they had a lot of information about certain individuals, and one of them being Joe Biden, I would imagine, and I'll just tell you what I've heard later on. But Trump filed an executive order on, I think, September 12th, 2018, to start this security option, national security option and defense option. There's also the Obama law of national Defense Administration Act, I think it's called NDAA, that came from the Obama era, and another document called NSAM 57, which gives certain executive powers to the president if somebody has promoted this type of disloyalty. Right? And the whole Department of Defense, you've probably noticed that it's been totally mocked by mainstream media, but there's been a realignment of the Department of Defense. Pardon me. Certain people had to leave. Certain people have been brought in. There have been some interesting changes made, like bringing back electric chair and firing squads and stuff like that. You can check all that out. And I'm not saying any of that necessarily will happen, but I think it's to show that there is a national security thing going on here. If there are people who are under the influence of foreign powers, that they can be charged with treasonous acts and they can be dealt with accordingly by the military, not by the civilian court, but by the military. So that's a possibility that it might happen. And I don't see, there was something that Trump said in his speech that if there is fraud, Joe Biden cannot be president. He said something like that. Well, I think he's telegraphing something. And I don't know him, and he doesn't know me, and it doesn't matter. But I think he's telegraphing something that, there's some serious information available about Joe Biden. And if you look at it a certain way, if you are an outgoing president, and let's say everybody hates your guts, it doesn't matter. Let's say you're an outgoing president, and it's your job to transfer constitutional authority to an incoming president, and you've got this file of information that says that this person is under the influence of a foreign power. As the outgoing president, can you transfer that authority to the incoming president? Can you do that? I mean, is that the outgoing president is now involved in this scheme, right? So that I mean, even if you hate Trump, I mean, if I were an outgoing president, I don't think I'd want to do that if I had this pile of information in front of me. And we'll see what that information is. We'll see. We don't really know everything, but I mean, we're starting to hear more and more, as the days go by. For he who has an ear and wants to hear, for he who has an eye and wants to see. And I'm not talking to the mainstream media and politicians, because I know they don't have an eye to see and they don't have an ear to hear. So I'm not talking to them. I'm talking to people who crave truth, who really are looking for truth. So the options going forward. I've heard it said that a presidential pardon has been offered to Joe Biden based on the information available of his involvements with China in particular. That probably would require a new election anyway. But there would be less bloodshed if he did accept that option. If Biden did accept the pardon, then at least he acknowledged something, and he would have to acknowledge something in order to accept the pardon, right? Because that's the whole point: is that something has been alleged, and then you're pardoned for it. But one of the conditions of the pardon would be that he has to acknowledge something about something, and we would see what that is. But also, it's a hard thing for Biden to accept, because he's probably got his numerous friends and well-wishers behind the scenes that, they see him in a medical boot right now, but they probably are looking out for him and saying, look, you don't want that medical boot to become a body cast or a body bag, so maybe you better keep your mouth shut and not accept this pardon. There's probably that kind of pressure going on behind the scenes as well. So I don't know what would become of that, but that would be the way with less bloodshed, and probably not requiring martial law, but possibly requiring a new election. Now, and it's temporary martial law. The other two options, the Supreme Court ruling, and especially if it went to Congress, all of that would require martial law, because can you imagine the Speaker of the House convening a meeting to vote for the president, knowing that the result is going to be that Trump gets back in? It's almost certain. So that if the SCOTUS ruling is favorable to Trump and the election reverts to Congress, then that will require martial law. And the other option, if the legal option doesn't work and there has to be these multiple arrests of treasonous actors who are under the influence of foreign powers, and a new election on top of it, well, of course, that of course will require martial law. So martial law is supposed to be temporary. Apparently Abraham Lincoln did it. I'm not an expert on U.S. history, but I think that Abraham Lincoln did it. And it might also include seizing the assets of not just individuals, but corporations who have been under the influence of foreign powers. So it could be quite extensive. But the stakes are not for one person to get reelected. The stakes are, what does the Constitution mean? Does it mean anything? The Constitution began in 1776 with a certain idea, a new idea, and then evil came upon the land. And in 1871, actually the U.S. Constitution was taken away, in effect. In 1871, there was an act that was passed to turn the United States not into a constitutional republic, to cancel that and to turn it into a corporation under the banks and our banker friends of, who we know. So I don't know. I think that this is it's been like 150 years of this erosion, and especially the last 30 years. So I think the issue is not bringing back one person who is just a temporary person. That's not the issue. The issue is looking ahead, different generations, children, grandchildren, looking down the road. What kind of country do you want? And other countries look at the U.S. and say, what kind of country do we want? Because this thing has been going on, this type of erosion and corruption has been going on all over the place. It's not just a U.S. thing. But the U.S. is experiencing a big problem with it now, and everybody's looking, everybody's watching all over the world. They're watching to see what's going to happen. What happens to the U.S. might well happen to someone else, whether it's good or bad. So it is an important thing, and it truly is not political. It's not Republican and Democrat. It's a civic constitutional issue, and it's not about liking Trump, not liking Trump. Even if you suffer from this, whatever it's called, Trump derangement syndrome, it could happen to anybody at any time. That's what you should be thinking, if you have an eye to see and an ear to hear. And I know some of the people I'm talking to, they don't. So I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the ones who want to see and hear. To give some sober thought to this, that it's not as simple as liking or disliking a political candidate, but there are a lot of ramifications, a lot of things are going on, and a lot of negative things are happening or could happen, and we get distracted by a lot of things. We put all this attention on the Middle East, and really, China we should be looking at. Really, China is very important right now, and I have heard rumors behind the scenes that maybe the Chinese Communist Party doesn't have the influence that it did. Maybe its influence is on the wane. I don't know, but I think that's right now. That's the focus, and it's not so much the Middle East. The Middle East is starting to take some small steps towards peace. So I guess that's a good thing, but. Really, I think that it's other countries. We've heard of involvement with China, we've heard of involvement with Ukraine, and these are the things that might come under this national security risk label. That is part of that framework for the defense option of dealing with this situation. So anyway, those are just some of the things that I wanted to point out, and. Maybe I'll just end with Psalm 91, which is on page 911 of my copy of the Bible, 911. He that dwells in the secret place of the Most High will abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him will I trust. Surely He will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the destructive pestilence. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. His truth will be your shield and buckler. You will not be afraid of the terror by night, nor of the arrow that flies by day, nor of the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor of the destruction that wastes at noonday. 1,000 will fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. Only with your eyes will you behold and see the reward of the wicked. Because you have made the Lord, who is my refuge, the Most High, your habitation, there will no evil befall you, neither will any plague come near your dwelling. For He will give His angels charge over you, to keep you in all your ways. They will bear you up in the palms of their hands, lest you dash your foot against a stone. You will tread upon the lion and adder, the young lion and the serpent you will trample under feet. Because he has set his love upon me, therefore I will deliver him. I will set him on high because he has known my name. He will call upon me, and I will answer him. I am with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation. Well, thank you very much for listening, and keep praying, and God bless you. And bye for now.